The Meaning of Maggie, Chapter 9. Mom was a total wreck in the days leading up to Christmas. At night, she cleaned the dickens out of the house, and that was after she cleaned the dickens out of the hotel all day. Things got really weird when she started ironing everything. She ironed the curtains, she ironed the dish towels, she ironed all of the laundry, even Dad's underpants, and she tried to iron my overalls. Footnote 36, while I was still wearing them. I didn't understand the big deal, what the big deal was. Dad's mom was visiting, not the Pope. Unless Dad's mom was the Pope, which was highly possible because I didn't really know anything about her. She hadn't visited since I was a little kid, way before Dad's legs fell all the way asleep. All I knew was that she lived in Missouri, which sounded miserable. Ooh, miserable. That's funny. Mostly because Mom said she was a complex woman who was never in a happy place. I asked why she didn't move to a happier place like Disneyland or the Jelly Belly factory, but Mom said it was more complicated than that. And Dad never had much to say about his own mother at all. Whenever I asked about her, he would change the subject and say, "Do you want some pudding? I would love some pudding." And then I would get us pudding because, well, I was hungrier for butterscotch pudding than I was for information about my own grandmother. Luckily, I knew there was always one person who would give me this straight, no matter what. Give it to me straight, no matter what. I found Tiffany folding towels an hour before grandmother was scheduled to arrive. "So what's the deal with the old lady? Do you know anything about her?" "She's crazy." "Oh, yeah?" I was curious. "What kind of crazy?" "I don't know much, but it sounds like she went nuts after Grandpa divorced her when Dad was younger. I think Dad wanted to live with Grandpa, and that's what really pushed her over the edge." I combed through the facts in my head while Tiffany folded. "Crazy, huh?" It made sense why grandmother would have gone crazy way back then, but maybe she would be less crazy now that Dad was all grown up, especially now that Dad and Grandpa didn't talk much. We hadn't seen him in a while either. The last time I saw Grandpa, he tried to steal my nose, and I was traumatized for life. I needed more information. "Do you think she's still crazy?" "Oh, yeah, maybe even crazier." Yikes, this didn't sound promising. "Do you think her crazy is genetic?" "Will we get it?" Tiffany looked me up and down like a doctor examining a patient. "I think one of us already has." I rolled my eyes and walked away. She was totally kidding, right? I retired to my room and thought long and hard about how our Christmas was being infiltrated by crazy. Our Christmas, which had already been compromised by Mom telling us we were only getting a few gifts because things were tight since Dad left work. Wonder what that statement means. Things were tight. Yeah, things were tight, lady, including my pants, which I needed new ones. And I also needed every Tolkien novel. Ooh, there's an Easter egg. The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings. I saw Clyde reading The Hobbit one day, and if it meant he was into short people, then maybe I stood a chance. I also needed an assortment of candies and chocolates to replenish my for emergency only stash that was completely depleted. I pulled a book out from under my pillow and tried to forget about Christmas and everything. I wouldn't get. I decided to get lost on Prince Edward Island in the pages of Anne of Green Gables. Oh, such a great book, and I believe a Netflix series. I must have gotten really lost because I didn't even hear grandmother arrive. In fact, I didn't hear Mom calling for me to welcome grandmother. In double fact, I didn't even hear my bedroom door creak open. But eventually the smell of old lady lotion made me look up. So, this was what crazy looked like. She was very small and frail. So frail, I imagined her bones were made of dust. So I scooted back, trying not to knock her over. Her brown hair was cut super short and her face hung like a bulldog's. The strangest part, she sort of looked like an evil dictator, even though I had no reason to believe that she was either evil or a dictator. But the brown eyes I thought we shared were actually much darker than mine, probably muddled by years of crazy this and crazy that. I felt like If I gazed into those dark eyes long enough, I would see all kinds of evil things. But I didn't want to see evil things because I was just a kid, so I gazed at the floor instead. I was just about to ask her all about being crazy, but she spoke first. Oh, Maggie, what happened to you? Her voice was low and gravelly. Ooh, let me try it again. Oh, Maggie, what happened to you? And I must have still been lost in Prince Edward Island because I answered her in my best turn of the century vernacular. Whatever do you mean, grandmother? She shook her head. I'll be speaking to your mother about this. She disappeared out the door and jumped up and looked in the mirror. I expected to see a cyclops eye forming in my forehead or a witch's wart taking over my nose, or at the very least, I expected to see chocolate, evidence from Mr. Goodbar I had finished just seconds before she opened my door. But there was nothing. I looked like Maggie. I looked like the Maggie I always looked like. What was she talking about? I headed to the kitchen to investigate and found Mom and Grandmother huddled close in conversation at the counter. Unfortunately, I only caught the tail end of their talk. Well, maybe if you were home with your children, like a mother should be, this wouldn't have happened, Grandmother lectured. My children grew up getting 3 square meals a day. Mom's face looked like it was going to explode when she noticed me. Hey, Maggie, go wash up for dinner. We're leaving in 5 minutes. I pretended to do as she said, but I hung back, waiting to hear the rest. Mom put on her coat. Listen, you're here to see your son, who could really use a mother right now. Why don't you leave my children to me? Ooh, shots fired. Burr, burr, burr. Mom's not happy. She walked away so fast she almost ran right into me. Busted. She took one look at me and pulled me down the hall to my room, where she slammed the door shut. Ooh, I smell drama. The nerve of that woman. You'd think after all that we've been through, she would at the very least be cordial. There's a word to look up. I don't know why I put up with it. She's only been here an hour and already she's ruined everything. How am I going to make it through the next 48 hours? Mom collapsed on Tiffany's bed and smooshed a pillow over her face. For a second, she looked just like Tiffany. Bad attitude and all. Then she tossed the pillow to the side and I could see worry fill her from head to toe. Maggie, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have reacted like that, especially in front of you. She looked stuck somewhere between angry and hysterical. I totally lost it, didn't I? I laughed nervously. Yeah. She stood up and got my hairbrush from the dresser. There aren't many people in this world who can get me as worked up as your grandmother. She brushed my hair. It's just that we have 2 very different definitions of family. I like definitions, so I asked, what do you mean? Well, I want you girls to feel loved every single day. Even when I'm not around, I want you to know that I'm thinking of you every single second. And I want you to feel like you can come to me for anything at all. That sounds wonderful. I'm going to underline that. It sounds like a really nice kind of love. She brushed my hair harder. But your grandmother parents through fear and guilt and judgment. Mom, you're brushing really hard. Mom released her death grip on the brush. Sorry, honey, I'm terrible. I shouldn't be talking about your grandmother like this. It's okay. I took the brush away. Tiffany's already told me she's crazy. She looked genuinely relieved. I'm sorry. She looked genuinely relieved. I'm glad somebody did. Dinner was weird, to say the least. We went to some fancy schmancy restaurant that was completely empty. Because it was Christmas Eve and families not taken over by crazy ate at home on Christmas Eve. Grandmother ordered everyone's meal, even Mom's, which made Mom's freckles boil. My meal was a garden salad with no dressing, which I thought was an appetizer, but no, it was the whole meal. My whole meal was a salad with no dressing. As soon as we got home, I went straight for my emergencies only stash in my room, but it was just as empty as it was before. I dug into the bottom of my drawer looking for something, anything, and just then a Rolo rolled out from under a sock. It was a Christmas miracle. I woke up the next morning to Tiffany's sideways face staring at me. "Merry Christmas," she whispered. "Merry Christmas," I whispered back. "I'm scared to go out there. It's like having a stranger take over our Christmas." "She's not a stranger," I sat up. "She's her grandmother." "You know what I mean." I did. I knew exactly what she meant. She halfway smiled, but it is kind of fun watching Mom lose it. "Yeah, it is," I agreed. We promised each other we wouldn't go out into the living room alone, so I waited for Tiffany while she did whatever she does for an hour in the bathroom. When she finally emerged, done up in red, green, and glitter, we slowly made our way to the living room. Dad was at the table drinking coffee with grandmother, while Mom and Layla were busy in the kitchen, fixing a Christmas feast. The tree was ablaze with colored lights and brightly wrapped gifts for one and all. I suppressed my urge to dive into the presents immediately and found Mom instead. I squeezed her side. "Merry Christmas." She smiled. "What took you so long? You have a million presents to open up." There weren't a million presents, but there were definitely more than I expected. Mom had made it sound like we were only getting socks and gruel for Christmas. But I got everything I needed and even a few things I didn't, like a brass bookmark from Mom and a Neil Young record from Dad. Even Tiffany and Layla got me a present, which was a Mayfield family first. I unwrapped the tiny box, lifted the lid, and ta-da, the most perfect pair of fake diamond earrings. They were dainty and understated. Former First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy would have approved. "They're so pretty," I held them up to see their sparkle, "but my ears aren't pierced." Layla pushed my hair behind my ears. "Mom said we can take you to go get them pierced." I shivered at the thought. "Maybe. I'll think about it." My turn. I reached under the tree for two gifts I'd wrapped especially for my sisters. I could barely contain my excitement as I handed one to Tiffany and one to Layla. They tore open the paper and tried to hide their disappointment. "Books?" Layla said flatly. Tiffany examined her book like she'd never seen one before. "Love poems, to be exact," I said. "Elizabeth Bartlett Browning wrote them for her husband, who was also a poet. I thought you would really like them, since they're all about love and stuff." Their faces lit up, and Layla gave me a squeeze. "This is great, Maggie." "Yeah, this doesn't, I can't say that word, entirely," Tiffany agreed. "I'm so glad you liked him. They're due back at the library next Monday. Don't be late." Mom gets really mad when she has to pay overdue charges. Layla and Tiffany laughed, and Mom and Dad laughed, and Grandmother just sat there because crazy people only laugh at themselves in secret while they're cooking up crazy plans to do all sorts of crazy things. It almost seemed like a normal Christmas. Then Grandmother handed Dad her gift. I honestly wasn't expecting her to give him much. I mean, she'd only given Mom a box of cologne. She'd given Layla and Tiffany lip gloss sets and me a nightgown that was 4 sizes too small. So her gifts were under the top, to say the least. She gave Dad an envelope and watched him open it. Her face looked intense and even crazier than usual. He pulled out a business card. "What is this, Mom?" "It's the card of the top neurologist in St. Louis. The wait to see him is usually a year long, but I did some pushing and managed to get you in the week after next. He'll get you all fixed up. He's the best of the best." Dad was silent, and then Dad flipped. "No one's going to fix me up, Mom. Don't you listen? I've told you over and over again. Now drop it." "Don't raise your voice at me," Grandmother said while raising her voice. "I'm just trying to help. I'm just trying to talk some sense into you. I brought you up to be more responsible than this." You haven't thought through a single thing. Mom, I've done the research. I've seen all the best doctors. I know what I'm doing. Oh, you do you? Grandmother lost it, 38, even more than she already had. This from the man who quits his job out of nowhere? You had 25 years with that company, and you just threw it all away. You can't take care of your family, let alone yourself. That's enough, Dad locked eyes with her. And I mean it. Mom stepped in. Girls, go to your rooms. The three of us stood up together, but Dad wanted us to sit back down. No, stay. Mom looked worried. Honey, I don't think now is the time to. I'd like to say something to the family. Dad locked his wheels in front of Grandmother. Now, I appreciate your concern, but I'm getting the very best care here. Dale and the girls don't know the first thing about taking care of you. If you'd been given proper care and attention all along, you wouldn't be in this condition. This is just like you. You don't listen, Dad shouted. And then you just say all these horrible things and you think there are no consequences. Well, I can say horrible things too, Mom. Where have you been the past 11 years? Where have you been? You hate Dad, but you're just like him. Both of you just ran away. I won't stand for this. Grandmother stood up, even though she just said she wouldn't. Not on Christmas. She stormed off. Dad yelled after her. That makes two of us. Grandmother stayed locked in Layla's room the rest of the night. We tried to carry on with Christmas, but it felt super weird. Mom even tried to get Grandmother to come out for dinner, but she refused. And I was glad she did. That meant more peace for the family and more honey-baked ham for me. The next day, Mom took her to the airport before any of us woke up. All she had left was a bottle of her old lady lotion, and I buried in the back of the linen closet, far away from the family, but close enough. So if ever I needed to be reminded what crazy smelled like, I could take a sniff. Before I knew it, it was New Year's Eve, and my family was a family again. Mom made us black-eyed peas to eat for luck on New Year's Day. Dad lined us up a stack of records he wanted to listen to as we rang in the new year. And I thought long and hard about my New Year's resolution. The year before, I had resolved to make myself a scholarly triple threat by getting straight A's. Perfect attendance and at least one academic award. I had succeeded effortlessly. But after everything that had happened, I resolved to do something that might have seemed impossible, especially to Dad. I resolved to do something that would take all of my brain, all of my heart, and both my bootstraps pulled all the way up. I resolved to fix Dad. Ooh.